These words of Peter that we've been studying in Second Peter are so vital, but they are so weighty and so powerful that I just want to encourage you that you go and you begin to think about what Peter wrote and that you study it out. Now, today we're in Second Peter, the first chapter, verse number 8. Now, this is going to really bless you if you really understand what Peter is writing. Now, Peter has been talking about, in verse 4, he starts by talking about the magnificent promises that God's given. And we've taken it and we've said, now those promises were given to us so that we could become partakers, not of all the things that God has promised us, not of all the finances and the health and all those things, but so that we can become partakers of God's very own nature. And I don't have the time to go back and talk about all the things that we've talked about in these last podcasts. But I want you to understand that these things are available to you right now. They're available to you by faith. You see, when Peter says here in verse number 8, for these qualities are yours and are increasing. I don't believe Peter is just saying that I see these qualities in you. Because you know what? Peter's getting reports. And he's getting reports and he's realizing that not all of the church is perfect. And not all of the church is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But I believe Peter, going back to verse number 4, is saying God has promised you these things. How many of you know that when God promises you something, it's done? It's settled. You don't have to get on your knees and beg, oh, God, please. You know what? God promised it to you. All you need to do is take it by faith and receive it. And you see, I believe here in verse number 8, when Peter says these qualities are yours and are increasing, I believe that Peter is saying God has already given you these qualities. And not only has he given them to you, but these qualities are now increasing in your life. In other words, they don't just sit there dormant, but as you receive these promises by faith, as you receive his divine character by faith, it continues to work. It continues to change. It continues to make you more and more like Jesus. Again, I say to you, you know what? It's not in your own strength. It's not in yourself. If your righteousness is from yourself, it's called self-righteousness, and it's nothing but a bunch of dirty rags. But if you're receiving the righteousness of God, the very character of God, and you're receiving it in faith, you know what? That's God's character, not yours. That's God's character inside of you. And it's yours. You can do it. You can be like Jesus. But remember, you're never going to come to the place of perfection until you stand before him in heaven. So it's something that he's given to you. It's something that you receive by faith, but it's something that continues to increase in your life. Now notice what he says next. He says, and they render you neither useless or unfruitful in the true knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. What renders you useful? What makes you useful? By you receiving all the promises that God's given to you. By you allowing those promises to change your character. Let me say this to you. You are not useless. You are not useless. As you are applying the character of God to your life, you are not useless. You have a purpose. You have a reason for being. You are not useless. You know, so many times we classify uselessness and fruitfulness or unfruitfulness in the terms of numbers. I have this many people in my church, or I have this. I have a new car, I have a new boat, I have a new house, and you know what? That doesn't render you useful or useless. It doesn't render you fruitful or fruitless. You see, the being useful and being fruitful is really seen in the character of God in your life. Do you understand that? You see, we need to understand that we become useful and we become fruitful, but we become fruitful as we become partakers of this knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. And as we come to know him, as we come to associate with him, as we come to understand who he is, then we are changed. Then this knowledge that we have of his character, we become like that as we receive those promises by faith. We become like Jesus. So I wanted to say to you as we begin to close this session, there's not such a thing as a useless, unfruitful believer. You are useful and you are fruitful, not according to numbers, not according to the things you possess, but the very character of God is on the inside of you by faith. So please understand that all of these things that we've talked about are yours. They're yours right now. They've been given to you to receive by faith. All of the character of God is contained in the promises of God. So I challenge you today, receive the promises of God. Begin to believe what God says. Begin to know who he is. And then in your knowledge, you're beginning to associate with him. You're beginning to have a relationship with him. And as you're having a relationship with him, you're becoming just like him. I hope these words have blessed you. And now until we speak to you in our next podcast, our prayer is that God will bless you abundantly.